Abraham Lincoln's complex ties with Native Americans. Abraham Lincoln signed laws that gave away millions of acres of tribal land and approved the mass execution of 38 Dakota Sioux warriors as America's 16th president. Lincoln is known for his legacy of freeing enslaved African Americans. However, his stance towards Native Americans fell short of applying these same principles of liberty and self-determination. Lincoln, whose grandfather was killed by Indian raiders, had limited direct contact with Native Americans. Despite being raised on the frontier, he volunteered to serve in the Black Hawk War, a conflict over tribal lands, but saw no combat. During Lincoln's presidency, tribal matters were secondary to managing the Civil War and ending slavery. Lincoln was largely uninformed on Native American issues and often followed the policies of his predecessors. These policies included breaking treaties, confiscating lands, forced removal, cultural assimilation, and ignoring military acts of genocide. On the western frontier, Lincoln signed laws that transferred millions of acres of tribal land to white settlers. He also approved the hanging of 38 Dakota Sioux warriors, the largest mass execution in U.S. history. Lincoln's upbringing on the frontier involved hearing stories of Native American attacks, particularly the killing of his grandfather by a small war party. This trauma influenced his views. At 23, Lincoln served in the Black Hawk War. Although he didn't see combat, he developed a more nuanced view of Native Americans, recognizing both their fierceness and their humanity. As President Lincoln often treated Native Americans, believing they needed to adopt white ways to thrive. This was evident in his interactions with Native leaders, where he sometimes spoke to them in a condescending manner. During his presidency, Lincoln's policies contributed to the displacement and suffering of Native Americans. In 1862, he signed the Homestead Act and the Pacific Railroad Act, which shifted tribal lands to settlers and companies. Lincoln left Indian affairs largely to local agents in the military, leading to atrocities like the forced march of 10,000 Navajo people and the Sand Creek Massacre. The Dakota Uprising in 1862, born of starvation and broken promises, led to a brutal response. Lincoln authorized the execution of 38 Dakota men after a flawed military trial. Although he initially intended to only execute those guilty of rape, Lincoln ultimately approved the sentences of those involved in the killings. He commuted the sentences of 264 men. The Dakota 38 were hanged on December 26, 1862, in the largest mass execution in U.S. history. Their descendants continue to remember this tragedy. Lincoln's actions toward Native Americans reflected the prevailing attitudes of his time, viewing them as obstacles to westward expansion. While Lincoln's legacy is celebrated for his role in ending slavery, his policies and actions toward Native Americans reveal a more complex and troubling aspect of his presidency. Lincoln's handling of Native American issues shows a significant contrast between his ideals and his actions, highlighting the limitations and contradictions of his leadership.